What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So Nintendo's finally done it, something they couldn't back in 1995, but now they're able to sell out the Virtual Boy, which is very weird, and wouldn't you know it, Scalpers decided to get in on the action, but something tells me this one probably won't work out for them, but we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony showing off an interesting idea for the controller, something that hasn't evolved too much when it comes to the inputs, with the face buttons and the D-pad and the joysticks. And we'll also be going over some statements that have been made now between Nintendo and Adhoc when it comes to dispatch and some of the censorship that we've seen with it. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're here every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over the world of gaming news, trying to keep you up to date. So even if you don't get a notification, just know there's probably a video here for you to check out in the morning. And we're going to start today with Xbox and this preview dashboard that they are showing off currently on their cloud streaming platform. And you can check this out as well. I believe it's play.xbox.com. But what I'll do is down below in the sources, I'll leave a link to Pure Xbox, as you can see, because they've done a nice roundup of videos for this, this dashboard showing it off. And this all exists in the web browser, as well as some screenshots we can take a look at, because people right now are theorizing that what we're really seeing is Microsoft and some early days for them seeing what can work for next generation, as we assume they're going to attempt to have this dashboard go across all different devices and make it fairly seamless, as in if you're playing on a browser versus on your console versus natively on your PC, you're going to have the same sort of look across the board. Now, people seem to really like this dashboard currently, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there are no advertisements. And look, the Xbox right now, if you use it, you're going to notice some ads that are just there on your dashboard. This does also look a bit cleaner, and I will say a bit more refined, almost as still sticking with the core concept of the current dashboard, but maybe looking, a bit more next gen. There's still a guide bar that'll pop out when you press that on the controller or using your keyboard and mouse. And again, it's something you can check out for yourself now. So maybe a quick little look into what we can expect to hear more about from Microsoft later on this year, when I do think they're going to at least do some kind of mention and maybe even show off what their plans are for next generation to round out their Xbox 25th anniversary. Also, here's an interesting rumor just to keep tabs on, because it has to do with Nintendo once again on the big screen with a property that I think would do really, really well, translate over well anyway. And you can see, it's Metroid. Now, this is from Daniel RPK saying that Nintendo reportedly has a Metroid movie in development, and Daniel RPK mostly covers a lot of the cinema, the big screen stuff here, with different rumors and reports going on around Hollywood and movies and TV series and stuff. So this is intertwined, of course, with games, but we know Nintendo is pushing more and more into the cinema space with their different movies they're doing now. We have Mario coming up here in a few months, Legend of Zelda next year, and Donkey Kong coming up at some point, it seems. So they're kind of like full speed ahead, and Metroid will work well, but I do wonder if this is a situation where it does make it into theaters, or is this something that Netflix and Amazon or whoever else picks up and just goes onto a streaming platform? I do also wonder if Metroid would work well as an episodic series where they do have more time, I'd say, rather than a single 2-hour movie. They have maybe an 8-episode run of 50 minutes or so each, and they can have time to explore sort of the galaxy and more time even with Samus as they work to establish the backstory, and maybe even some different companions, of course, that Samus runs across along the way. But something definitely to keep an eye on here, because I think a movie around Metroid could do really well if they do it correctly. Oh, and for all the people that I do see out there who are asking, where's YouTube for the Switch 2? Well, it seems like it could be popping up this month, and you can see this is over on My Nintendo News, and they're pointing to a YouTube Discord mod who says Google has been working on a YouTube app for the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's set to release this month. So there you go, Discord mod with YouTube. I mean, look, YouTube is basically on just about everything right now, and it was just gonna be a matter of time before it worked its way over to the Switch 2. I'm a little surprised it's taken this long to get that application done, but I guess we'll keep an eye out for it popping up sometime in February. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with I think a pretty funny situation that's unfolding right now. As we know, scalpers do like to take advantage of all the latest releases, I mean, across the board, but we've been noticing them more and more in the gaming space, especially going back to the pandemic and the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X with that supply crunch, and how PlayStation 5s were showing up on the market for $1,500 on places like eBay, and they were selling, which was madness. Since then, that's kind of alleviated itself, and the market's pretty much corrected at this time. But we still have those occasional moments where new hardware releases or new accessories, and scalpers, they'll take a swing at it to see what happens. And well, that's going on right now. And again, funny situation unfolding, as we do have the Virtual Boy attachment coming out in a few weeks. It's actually releasing February 17th. And Nintendo's website does note, and I just want to put this out there now, okay, because there's no real point in buying from resellers or scalpers, some of the listings I'm going to show you, because Nintendo themselves say, check back February 16th, the day before it comes out, as they're anticipating more stock to be available, all right? So, like, if you look right now over on Nintendo's website, we have the $100 Virtual Boy, which is more or less the replica. You will need, of course, your Switch, so you have to pop that into the head unit there. But this is a replica for the Virtual Boy. And I will say Nintendo, with a lot of their NSO stuff, they've done a very, very good job with the accessories. Specifically, I'm thinking about some of the controllers here, of course, where they've done a good job getting as close as possible, almost one-to-one with the plastics and the overall feel of it, while still having additional buttons that you need for the Switch 2 or the Switch 1 when using, say, the Nintendo 64 controller or the GameCube controller. So I do anticipate this Virtual Boy head unit to be pretty good, as in it will feel as close as they can get it to the Virtual Boy from way back in the day in 1995, and it released for $180, I believe, back then. Significantly more, of course, inflation, all that, if you move it up to current times. So at $100, it's sold out, and we'll look towards the 16th for that one. But even the cardboard model at $25, that's sold out, which is funny. Not that it necessarily people were buying that one because, look, it's more of, okay, I'll just try it out on a whim. It's more the fact that Nintendo, ran out, apparently, there's more than just cardboard, because you have the lenses in there too, but I don't know, it's just humorous that it's the cardboard. They ran out of the cardboard. Either way, people did manage to pick these up, of course, because you can see on places like eBay right now, I've noticed a couple of different listings. The most expensive one that I've seen so far is for that main $100 head unit at $250. There's a few others. $190 seems to be the going rate currently outside of this $250 one. And while it does say it's in someone's cart, or there have been a bunch of people checking it out, none have sold. And again, there's really no point, because when we get right up against that release, we're expecting Nintendo to have some more stock available. So to me, I think this is going to be a big swing and a miss for scalpers. It's interesting. The Virtual Boy, very difficult for Nintendo to sell back in the day in the mid-90s. But here comes the Switch or the Switch 2, and they're selling out. They're able to move them to the point where scalpers feel like they're in position to try to double or even triple up their money. Well, it seems like they're probably gonna have a rude awakening on that one, because I don't believe the Virtual Boy head units are going to be able to sell for that much, especially if Nintendo really does show up with any decent amount of stock. I'm also curious how many people are buying into this just for the curiosity's sake. Like, hey, I didn't have a Virtual Boy back then, because most people didn't, and this will be a brand new thing to me. Maybe I will take a shot at it with this. Even then, you feel like you would just go for the $25 one. Because the $100 one, I do think, is people who do have fond memories of it, but $25, you're like, I'll try it and see what happens. At least here, though, with Nintendo having some unreleased games, even one just straight out of F-Zero, that I'm sure got some people a bit more interested. So I'll be curious to see how that day one stock does, and if it does sell out very, very quickly. Otherwise, though, yeah, pass on the stuff that's on eBay right now, because it's really not worth that. And I think in this case, scalpers probably are going to be left holding the bag. Next up, let's talk about Sony and an interesting patent showing off an idea for their controller. Now, again, patents don't necessarily mean that it's going to come to market, but it does show some ideas that they have internally that they're at least willing to put through the patent office, get that all set up and in writing. So what does Sony have? Well, this was filed back in 2023, and a few years later now, we're seeing it published completely here and made public. And it's for a controller that doesn't have buttons, but just a touch screen on it. Maybe a couple of touchscreens, but like you can see the figure here, and this was shared over on VGC, where they say, according to the patent's description and accompanying images, the controller would have a large touchscreen covering most of its top surface, where the buttons would usually go. The idea is that players would be able to customize where the D-pad, sticks, or action buttons should be positioned on the controller to best suit their personal taste, accessibility needs, or what best suits each specific game. It appears that players can also choose to resize the buttons, or even remove some buttons altogether for certain games. So if you like, just at a glance, it doesn't seem like a bad idea to be able to customize your setup on the fly with a touchscreen, even removing different buttons, because there's the age-old debate of, asymmetric sticks or symmetrical sticks. Or if you look at Microsoft and Nintendo, the age-old debate of the A and B placement. So with that in mind, it's a cool idea, but the feedback of having tactile buttons just missing and you're just hitting a touchscreen, I don't know about that, because I feel like most people who are watching this have experienced something like that, whether it's through an emulator or playing games on your phone just outright. There's like mobile phones that release. It's not great. Like usually you even have to kind of look down at the touchpad or touchscreen to make sure you're hitting the right buttons, and it doesn't have the same sense of control that you would have if you had the actual sticks and buttons, the whole thing. That's why people buy like the additional attachments or just sync up a controller, because it just works. It's the standard. So unless we get to a point where the touchscreen is able to give similar feedback to pressing a button down or moving a joystick, I just don't know how feasible this would really be. Now, for accessibility, it does make sense. All right, so if you need buttons in a certain space, or we've seen them work around with their accessibility controller setup, like I could see this making its way into it, not necessarily as like the full control scheme, but maybe off to the side where you have a panel where you can put a number of different inputs to make it easier to get to. That all lines up. But for a primary controller, or even a pro-like controller, I don't know about that one. Maybe they think about replacing that the touchpad on the PlayStation 5, the DualSense controller, and the PS4 controller. Maybe they decide to replace that with a touchscreen, and there's all kinds of customization you can do there. That would actually be kind of neat. Almost a page then out of Sega with the VMU, which still an awesome idea, and I think it would be kind of neat if we saw a new age version of that ship with a console, like that kind of controller, because then developers can just take advantage of it out of the box. But for now, I think this is something that'll probably stay in the vault until we have some kind of breakthrough with touchscreen technology. Next up, let's talk about the whole thing that's been ongoing for dispatch on the Switch and the Switch 2, as we just have the censored version, and of course on the PS5 or on Steam, you have a little toggle that can go uncensored or censored. Unfortunately, that is not the case with the Switch version. It's just always censored. So there have been back and forth as to whose fault it is, what happened here. Now, though, we have some statements that I think is starting to shed some light, and we may have a solution here in a few weeks. But let's start at the top with Nintendo's statement. Now, this was made to Go Nintendo. Nintendo says, Nintendo requires all games on its platform to receive ratings from independent organizations and to meet our established content and platform guidelines. While we inform partners when their titles don't meet our guidelines, Nintendo does not make changes to partner content. We also do not discuss specific content or the criteria used in making these determinations. Okay, so that's from Nintendo. Then the following day, Adhoc, this is over on their Discord, they made this statement. As Nintendo states, any game that's going to be on Nintendo platform needs to meet Nintendo's established content and platform guidelines. This is the key point. Nintendo has content guidelines. Our game didn't meet those guidelines, so we made changes that would allow us to release on their platform. That's what happened here. Honestly, we thought this would be obvious since we're the devs that released a fully uncensored version of the game on other platforms. We initially assumed, like some of you, that because games like Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk are on the platform with similar types of uncensored, mature content, Dispatch would be allowed to do the same. During the porting process, it became clear that was not the case, so we asked that we include a disclaimer on the store page to inform customers that content would be different than on other platforms. We worked with Nintendo to get storefront language approved. They did apologize for how small that disclaimer was, and it was quite small. It was kind of down almost in the fine print. So they did work to make it a bit larger and upfront if, say, someone goes to buy it right now. All right, they go on to say, we're already working with Nintendo on a path forward. While we can't make any specific promises just yet, we're confident we'll be able to push an update to address at least some of the censored content. I'll get ahead of it now and say that between dev time and the console submission process, we're talking weeks, not days. So I guess that is some good news, and that we could see at least an outcome where Dispatch is uncensored. I'm still trying to figure out, a lot of people are, exactly what happened here. Probably the best theory at this time is that they made a version of the game that they submitted to Sero, that being the ratings board in Japan, that would just not fly. It was going to end up being adult only or whatever X rating they have to give it, and Nintendo wasn't going to have that on their storefront. So instead, they censored it to the point where Sero let it through, and then they just released that as one SKU across the board. And yes, that means in outside of Japan, we get that censored version. Cyberpunk, that did release a specific version to Japan, and they also mentioned Dispatch on other consoles. Well, the PS5 version, that released in Japan alongside of the Switch version, and it also has the same censorship stuff where you can't apparently toggle it off. So it also mimics the Switch and Switch 2, but only in Japan. So all of that kind of adding up to, they need to work this out to where they can have one version in Japan and then one version outside of Japan that would be just like the PS5 version now. So miscommunication, not sure at this time. So hopefully they're able to work all of that out after a few weeks. But the thing they say they learned is, yeah, we probably should have made sure that the disclaimer was larger, and we probably should have reevaluated our position heading into its release with the different versions that we have set up and the censorship, because yeah, that has not gone over well, and it's very, very unfortunate because I think Dispatch is a good game that is worth playing, but not necessarily if it is just fully censored, because it does lose a lot in terms of jokes or even just outright narrative elements when you have like massive black bars taking up like 50% of the screen. It does kind of lose something there. So here's hoping they can work all of this out in the next few weeks. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about WWE 2K26, because we got all kinds of information around the game as well as the release date. So let's start at the top here. I'll also leave down the sources Game Informer, who had a pretty good rundown of all kinds of stuff, and there was a massive information dump around 2K26. So we'll start at the top with the cover, and it is CM Punk. Now, this is the first time he's headlined since WWE 13. It's been a while then, so there you go. Showcase mode is dedicated to Punk's career. I guess you'll be able to go through all the highlights as he's had throughout, decades now of his career. There's over 400 playable characters. That's the most they say that they've had in like franchise history for this game. 4 new match types. They have Inferno, I Quit, 3 Stages of Hell, and Dumpster Match. The Island is returning. I know there's mixed opinions on the Island, but it's coming back. However, there will be no PS4 or Xbox One versions, and it looks like the PC version will also be getting the Island. This is a weird thing to where the last gen versions didn't have the Island, which seemed like something that they were at least focusing on and advertising a lot, but they didn't have it, and I think the PC version didn't either. So they've decided to drop the last gen versions, and they're just going forward with PS5, Xbox Series, PC, and Switch 2. So yes, the Switch 2 will also be there at release. It'll even have Game Share utilized, and they're going to also use mouse support, which seems to play into the creator wrestler. I guess you'll be able to do some designs and stuff a bit easier by using mouse mode. This is coming out March 13th. You do have access to like an early edition of the game that will go live March 6th. And trust me, they showed off several different editions. It starts at $70 and it works its way all the way up to the $150 Monday Night War edition. And there's everything in between. I mean, no shortage again of different editions to buy into. And the pre-order character they have or bonus is Joe Hendry. So there you go. I mean, look, I play some of the WWE games. It's a lot of fun to go online with like Nate or a couple others, and we'll just see if we can win some matches in tag team format. And it's a good time. It's a very social game for me. I don't play a lot of the single player stuff, although I did back in the day for things like Here Comes the Pain or Day of Reckoning. So maybe I'll look again into this. I didn't even get into the Island, so it's the showcase mode. I guess was fun, but that's kind of where I am. I'll pick this up probably and just play online for quite a while and have a blast with it. But otherwise, look towards March 13th or March 6th if you want to spend the big bucks. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you used a Nintendo Virtual Boy system Wow, 81% just say no. 19% say yes. I saw some people in the comments like, I never owned one, but I tried it at a kiosk and it didn't necessarily sell me on it. So look, again, I think it's just going to be interesting to see this Virtual Boy head unit with the Switch 2 in action, kind of to see if it can replicate it well. I mean, I have used a Virtual Boy. We'd get them in occasionally, believe it or not, for repair back in the day at the store, and I would have to spend like an hour or two making sure it didn't heat up and lose vision in one of the two eyes. That was always the biggest issue, is that you would lose video on one side because the glue or the connection for the ribbon cable would just be poor and brittle and start to break apart. You have to resolder it. It was a whole thing. But when I did have those come in and I had to test it, I mean, I tried it out for quite a while. So it was a different experience. Interesting one for the mid-90s. So I'll be curious to see if they can pull it off here later on this month with the release for NSO. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Vintage, who says, Crimson Desert has to be the most there's gotta be a catch game of all time. Yeah, but here's the thing. If they pull it off, if this game comes out and it checks all the boxes and people are like, wow, no, that really is the game. It does have all that stuff and it's really good. That's the thing. It's high risk, high reward on a game like Crimson Desert. So, I mean, it's kind of the thing where I have to see it to believe it a bit, but we'll also have reviews. I'm sure this is a game that'll go out early enough to where reviewers have maybe even more than a week with the game to check it out. And I mean, we'll find out then how good it really is, because when they put the game out into the public, we'll find out all kinds of, with an open world game, if there are any bugs or glitches, if the game's breaking a lot, especially on PC. So it'll be an interesting run there as we get into March to see how Crimson Desert turns out. Hoping, though, it ends up being a really good game, because so far it's promising a lot. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about Sony's handheld plans, and actually handhelds coming up, it seems. One for 2026, and maybe one for 2027 that won't have to stream games. I did an entire video on that, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.